All right, this is September 24. It feels like we have made some huge progress today. Thank you to everyone for helping get the last few PRs in. I just updated, just as this meeting was started, I updated the release checklist. We moved a bunch of stuff down in the past 24 hours. So we're now just waiting on status conditions and the very large documentation section. And I should add, to be honest, I should add the API cleanup because I think that is something we want to have as part of this. But we are making great progress, I think. So yeah, thanks to everyone for contributing here. And I had to say, I think Harry and I must have been thinking the same thing independently, but I looked at the list of pull requests and we had 4 open, which is fantastic. It's lower than it's been a long time. And I looked at the issues and we have, when I looked, there was 80. I think Harry's already closed some, so thank you. But today seemed like a great day to spend some time focusing on issues. So with that said, it looks like Harry has added a lot here. It looks like these are all ones you think might belong in V1 Alpha 1. Is that correct, Harry?
Yeah, so I went to the list of the issues and I've closed some. I have pinged the authors on others.
Oh, sorry. I'm sure everyone can hear you but me, but I screwed up my audio somehow. So 1 second.
It might be me. Can somebody else confirm if you can hear me?
Sorry, I missed whatever you were saying.
Okay. So
yeah, Harry, I think you're fine.
Okay. So yeah, I went through all the almost all the issues at this point. I closed some where I was confident that things were settled. I've pinged multiple people on some issues where I think it's settled, but we probably could use some consensus. And then while I was going through this, I thought like some issues need some discussion. Probably, like we should at least discuss like, is this part of even Alpha 2? Or this is something part of even Alpha 1, and if yes, then if somebody can volunteer on that. So just do some triaging of these issues. That would help us.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for getting this list together. This is great. Danian, yeah, it looks like you're on this call. Configurable gateway endpoint publishing. Do you remember what this one was about?
If you scroll down to the bottom, I think maybe it needs to be closed, or maybe we decided to leave it open. But I believe when we discussed this, we discussed it and decided that it was implementation specific.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that's okay. So then the controller can figure out how they want to populate the state.
Okay.
Right. This is yeah. So the gateway decides, okay, should I create a gateway instance and expose it via node port, via service, load balancer type, so on and so forth.
That makes sense. Okay. We will close that for now then. Let's see what's next. The universe of resources that can be routes. This is a great one. Micah, do you happen to remember the background here?
More or less, it's something that as an implementer, you need to know what resources do you need to watch? What things can that label selector match?
And I think we have already solved this now, right? Because our route selector includes a kind or a resource now. I forget which field we use, but you can now only select one kind of route per listener, if I'm remembering that correctly. That would solve this issue, right?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, next one. Yeah, okay. This feels like a documentation request more than anything, right? Because we clearly support both at this point, but we have maybe not documented that well enough. Is there any specific thing we need to add to documentation to answer this question better?
I think this was opened at a time when we didn't have anything else other than TC, like significant other than HTTP route. So maybe if we can ping Jay back and ask, like, do you think the API has what we need? Or
I think we can just close it. He can just put a comment saying reopen, because it's pretty clear when we go to populate the docs that it's in scope.
That works for me. Yeah, okay. This is something that I think we can, does anyone know if there's a coup builder or CRD validation that can enforce immutability? Oh yes, I answered that right here. And it is still not a thing. So we we probably need another label or something to indicate things that will need to be solved with a webhook. I know we have several things. Surely there's nothing already. Yeah, okay. Maybe anyone mind if I just create a validating webhook label? Or maybe webhook?
yeah, maybe just area webhook.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Cool, I will do that. Sure. And this probably does not need to be a bug, but it should be frozen. Or, well, it is kind of a bug. Okay.
Yeah, but this can be post V1 alpha 1 or
Yes,
later too, right?
agreed.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome.
Yeah. So it's not part of a milestone right now, and I think it's fine to leave it that way. If maybe we need a V1 alpha 2 mile, I don't know.
Yeah, I already have created it.
Oh, okay. Surely it's reasonable to have this by V1 alpha 2. Okay.
This one is where we want to drop like the selector, like from the
Right.
suffix, right? So that seems to be like, we need to settle that on, given that we love selectors and we have like innumerable number of selectors. So
If we ever want to rename these APIs, it could just be Selector APIs, because yeah, we've got them that's a great question. Does anyone, this feels like something where it'd be good to do a quick survey of what we've seen in upstream. Obviously the thing I think of right away is service, deployment, whatever, that all very clearly have Selector in their name. And I think even network, I think Selector inside the name makes sense. I don't know. What do you think, Harry, or anyone?
we should decide if this is V1 alpha 1 or not, and then like, it seems V1 alpha 1, right?
This seems,
Yeah.
This kind of stuff seems to be like not super critical. You just pick one, be consistent right now. If we change it, then we change it.
I think my preference is if, and I know I have gone against this in the past, but I think for the sake of consistency, having selector in the name probably makes sense when it's a selector field. Does anyone feel strongly any other way? Okay, I'll run with it.
Can you assign that to me? Just
Sure,
get it done.
that's fantastic. Yeah, okay. I think this may be a dupe. Well, no, I don't have an issue for this, but this seems highly related to the conversation, the kind of broader conversation of if we want to even have defaults at all for these object references. This was something that in the initial API review or API feedback I got from Tim, he pointed out as being strange and maybe not as helpful as we thought it might be. He didn't explicitly say that we needed to remove it, but it did seem, like the absence of config maps, we've already removed config maps as config maps default, but the absence of those resource names could just be confusing potentially. Was that logic? I don't know. It seems like there's not an easy way to fix this beyond that, though. Beyond just either, or was there, I think Bowie has suggested in the past that we should be using aliases instead of, though that may not solve this.
Oh, is this the documentation thing? Yeah, we have to go through and instead of using Go aliases, just define them structurally to create a new type. Because I think the use of aliases is wrong. As I recall, the use of aliases is just for like temporary type migrations or something. And they don't behave properly. Instead, we should say type foo is a bar instead of type foo is an alias of bar, which is the equal sign.
I thought we are doing the equal sign right now.
No, we shouldn't use the equal sign.
Okay, so we should not, and we should use aliasing instead. Or no, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Okay, so instead of this, you're saying that should become the same thing, just without equals.
Get rid of the equal sign.
Yeah. Okay.
I think if you do that, everything works, and you don't get any of the weirdness.
Okay.
So if someone wants to take this stuff, just go through the code base and just get rid of the equal sign. And I think that fixes all the dot generation issues, all the strange comment generation issues.
Okay. That would be amazing if that's all it is.
Should this go in scope or can be out?
This seems pretty easy, like just get rid of equal signs. I think we have to do this anyways because the docs right now get generated badly.
Sure, okay. Optional listeners. I think we've decided against this, right?
Yeah, we decided against it and made it more strict. So, but there seems to
Yeah.
to be some conversation here that we need to refer back.
I think I think this has generally been solved by the idea of TCP route and UDP route. Like this conversation started before those routes were even a thing. I know, or I believe that there was still some desire to avoid using a route entirely. But I don't know. I don't think this is something that we need to solve in V1 Alpha 1 at least. Maybe the thing is we don't need to close this, but we also don't need to solve it in V1 Alpha 1.
That sounds okay.
Okay. Should I add it to V1 Alpha 2 or just leave it undefined?
We can leave it undefined, or we can ask people to take another look, just so this is not going stale forever. I don't know. Like, should we move this forward or just let it be?
Yeah, Rob, can we create a milestone called like backlog or something? Because it would be good if like no milestone means we still have to triage it, and then milestone triage. I don't know how we would want to do it.
Maybe
Or we
label
just
it.
leave no milestone.
Yeah.
Is there
Must be a triage.
Priority backlog. We'll do that.
Yeah, there we go.
Cool. Discuss domain match versus wildcard match for listener host names.
Yeah, so this is, I think I and James were discussing this and it came out of that. Where we do domain. So we have a host name match type on the listener inside the gateway. And we just want to, like, what should be the name? Like right now it's named domain. Is that good enough? Or should it be wildcard? I think that's the, and so if it's wildcard, it should be star.example.com, right? So which one is better? The first one is what we have right now. That's, I think, the gist of this issue.
Huh. The requirement of a wildcard feels, I don't know. I did not pay attention to this initially. Boy, it looks like you'd left some comments. Did you have any preference here?
Domain match versus wildcard match for listener host names. Let me take a look at this again. I need to kind of load it back up.
Yeah.
Can you assign? Yeah, just assign it to me.
Okay. Cool. I do not think that, I personally don't think this needs to be in V1 Alpha 1.
I agree.
They seem similar enough to me that we're not losing anything significant.
Okay, let's go to the backlog since we kind of triaged it.
Huh. Yeah, this is an old one, February 10. Does anyone remember the discussion around this? It feels like
I could be wrong, but I think this is about like the SNI in the TLS handshake has foo.com, but the HTTP request that you get on that connection or session.
I think we solved this, didn't we? Because we pushed the host name up to the listener block and you can't get a mismatch now.
I think
Oh.
so. I think so.
I'll just I'll ping James to see.
But then you again have the any match on the listener, and you can still run into this, right? With the any match, you can.
Yeah, it's not clear. Like, is it that you absolutely, because it's somewhat in, like, it can't be guaranteed by the config on some level.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and like in a single listener, even without any match, you can actually get into this, right? Because you can still configure a listener which has the same port, 2 different host name, 2 different certificates, right? foo.com, bar.com, and then the request path. So this is something you cannot enforce in the API. You have to document it, and you have to rely on implementers to enforce it in their proxy path.
Yeah, because it's like, what if they're just, yeah, it's okay. Anyway, let's follow up with James, and then I think this is not possible unless we just state that you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, I think it's mostly about just documenting, like, yeah, don't do that.
Okay. Gateway and gateway class. Yes, this was a fun discussion. Okay. I thought we had already resolved this. There was definitely a lot of confusion between what a gateway and gateway class were. I forget which one of these I'm using.
Yeah, once we document it, I think we can just double check, and then this one will be closed.
I feel like this is something that will naturally be solved when we update documentation, and if it isn't, it should be. So I'm fine with adding this to the V1 Alpha 1 milestone, if that works for everyone. Okay, one last one on this list. Thank you, Harry, for getting this list together. This is helpful to highlight some of these. When a gateway class is deleted, the spec does not address what happens to any gateways that refer to that class.
And this is now a bigger problem because
It is.
controllers rely on gateway class.status, not provisioned gateways.
Yep. Yeah, and well, yes. I think the ideal option is option 2. There is no perfect way to do that, but the idea of preventing the deletion of gateway class seems reasonable here to me.
So is that like putting a finalizer on the gateway?
I think so. Which obviously you can bypass that, but that seems like a reasonable initial attempt. We still this is indicative of a much larger issue that's tougher to solve, of the, when gateway classes change, or when parameters change, or any of these things change, how does that affect originally provisioned gateways that have used that class? This is
Rob, do you
Yeah.
know what kind of permissions do you need to put a finalizer? Do you need like update permission to the gateway class, or do you like is status
All right.
sub resource like write on a status like gateway class dot status enough? Because if you need write on the gateway class, I think
That's not ideal. Yeah. Huh.
To me, this seems more like another area where we want a webhook.
Okay. You are right. We could use a webhook to prevent to enforce two.
Yeah, if you
Um,
use the
If
finalizer,
you just
I'm
like
not
a
sure what would finalize.
finalizer. Sorry, isn't this basically what a finalizer does?
Right, but can't you get around finalizers?
Sure,
Yeah,
but
you
you
can
can
always,
get around webhooks too, like, well, harder, but
Right. I mean, you can just get rid of the webhook, but if you have permission to get rid of the webhook, you can do whatever.
well, I'm not understanding how a finalizer solves the problem. It seems like that solves half the problem. It says you can't delete this until something finalizes it, but you still need a something that essentially does what we would do with webhook, that checks whether there are any gateways using the gateway class and then removes the finalizer if not.
wouldn't the gateway class controller always be watching the gateway class and they could tell that the gateway count went to 0? And then it would basically say finalize.
but then we have another problem if somebody creates a gateway class as a not yet provision. Oh, then,
Yeah, it's going to
yeah.
be hard to solve everything here. We just have to see from experience whether or not this is going to be like a very common race condition or something that if you like try to trigger it, I guess you could get things confused. Like if you're trying to mess up the controller by creating tons of games, I guess that's an attack that you could do. I'm not sure it's like a attack that's worthwhile because basically you're just messing yourself up.
Yeah. Do we know what storage classes do?
I don't think they have a very good policy. So I know that some implementations don't even handle this. That if it just disappeared out from under them, they just kind of like things just go wrong or they get orphaned.
I think for V1 Alpha 1, we can leave this as undefined and come back if this actually is a problem. Like this seems like somebody who really wants to break things, right? Like a user could very well delete a gateway class by mistake as well, though. But it seems like a problem.
Yeah, so we should make sure that you can safely upgrade and delete gateway classes. I think someone like maliciously trying to mess with the classes is less interesting, I guess. You know, the Unix philosophy of like bad things happen and then it just crashes might be okay here for the extreme cases. If the cost of trying to like completely make it safe is not worth the complexity.
I agree with that.
Because I'm cautious of like adding webhooks just to guarantee like no deletion.
So yeah, but if we already have a webhook in place, I agree this is not sufficient reason to add a webhook. But if we already have a validating webhook, yeah, I don't know. You're right. This is you kind of
Yeah, let's see what the
intentionally
experience is.
Yeah.
The danger of like, yeah, because I don't know, like, are there other resources? It's pretty hostile to like prevent deletion in a very permanent way. I feel like most of the Kubernetes things has you can force it if you want, and you know that you're doing something a little bit weird. But imagine like there was a bug your system kind of got into a confused state, and now you're just trying to clean it up by just violating all sorts of constraints. If you absolutely lock people out, then they actually can't repair it in that case, as opposed to sort of 98% of the time you're within bounds, and then something blew up, and then now you can just manually try to like force. I think that's why the finalizers have a force, is because if you had a bug, if the controller had a bug, you can still recover from that. Whereas if you just completely lock people out, then, you know, I don't know, like they would have to like reboot their cluster, like edit. It just seems a little overly harsh.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Does anyone want to volunteer here? I thought there was a good idea here about how finalizers might work. And although we're not really solving this here, I think it would be useful somewhere in this issue to at least document that suggestion and how it could potentially work, just so we don't lose this conversation.
Yeah, just tag me on that, Rob, since
Okay.
I came up with that word. I'll.
Perfect. Thanks. All right, I think that's the end of this list. There's a few, well, there's lots more issues to go through. Thank you. This feels like something that should also be V1 Alpha 1, unless I think it's reasonably easy to get, and I would hate to release a V1 Alpha 1 that had, you know, invalid examples or invalid CRD, you know, whatever. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. This seems reasonable. John, are you also volunteering to work on this? No pressure. If you're talking, I can't hear you. Okay. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, this would be awesome. Does anyone mind if I add this to the V1 Alpha 1 milestone?
Yeah, I think it should be in there. So.
Okay. Cool. And I will assign John to this. Thank you for creating the issue. All right. The other tiny one that I had an issue of, I've noticed that all our license headers, for whatever reason, don't actually have any attribution. I don't know if this matters. I am the furthest thing from a license expert. I just noticed it is very, you know, as an example, here's cluster API, all of Kubernetes, whatever. And, you know, you look at any one of our types files and we just kind of missed that one line. I don't think that was intentional. Does anyone know any reason we might want to avoid this? It seems like a really easy thing to fix. Before V1 Alpha 1, it seemed like we might as well just match up with what the rest of the Kubernetes repositories are doing.
Yeah, I think let's do that. Usually OSS software has that owners or whatever. So
cool. And then this one I think would be good to discuss here. Harry, yeah, you want to give some background?
Yeah, so we have this route namespaces. This selects the route. What does this do? I don't know where it is used. No, we moved it from gateway class to the gateway level.
Yep.
And this selects, you know, which routes to select. So here, the way the API is laid out, we have a label selector, and we have only same namespace. If only same namespace is set to true, the label selector does not kick in. Now, by default, our behavior is to set the only same namespace to true. So that seems a little off, just with the principle of, like true by default is not a good API design.
Yeah.
But I couldn't come up with a better solution while adding that.
Yeah. So I agree with the default here being awkward. I can't come up with a good field name that is the inverse of this.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you come up with an inverse field name, you still don't want that default, right? Like, how will you reconcile that with the namespace selector field?
Right. Right. Well, so what you would need is you would need this field would be a field that would enable the use of namespace selector. And by default, it would be false. And so you can only use namespace selector if field foo is true. But by default, that field is false.
I see.
That makes sense. I'm struggling with a name that works here. Or that's similarly clear.
The other option we have is where this is referenced, we have like route selector. So we just, instead of route namespaces, we have like a route selector. And in the field, if you specify a route selector, that kicks in. But if you don't specify it, you select the routes from your namespace.
Got it. So I remember we had done something similar to this before. And what we had was a difference between nil and empty. And nil meant same namespace and empty meant all namespaces because yay selectors. I think the feedback there was that was confusing, that nil and empty being so close together but having such different meanings was not great. And so we kind of split it up, even though it doesn't necessarily need to be.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, we'll keep nil and empty selector as the same thing, right? Like it means you're selecting in the namespace you are in. If you do have a namespace selector, then that kicks in.
Oh, so well, but the standard is for an empty selector that selects all namespaces. That is the Kubernetes standard interpretation of that, unless we.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. I don't think we have a way out here. So.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that default, like I get why that default is what it is, but it does complicate these kind of differentiations.
Yeah, let's probably just I'll respond here like the options we have, and like I'll just close it for time being.
Yeah, I don't mind, at the very least, I don't mind a default, like an inverse field here. If there's a good name we can come up with that has, kind of an inverse meaning, so we can have a false default instead of a true one, I think that could make sense. I just haven't been able to come up with a name. And I think it's difficult to combine kind of a 3-state selector of nil, empty, and specified, because nil and empty are going to be so close conceptually, but so different in how they're interpreted.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing we could do is cross namespace and set that to false.
Yeah. I think there's something to that of something like that, multi namespace, cross namespace. Yeah, cross namespace. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. I think we have a couple of ideas. Let me see if I can follow up on this one.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I think we're at time. Thank you, everyone, for the great feedback here. I should note, I kind of have this massive PR open. I will take some time tomorrow to try and clean it up. I have finally rebased it. That was fun, but now there's already an awesome amount of feedback on it. So I'll take some time tomorrow to try and get it up to date, and ping anyone who's already looked at it to take another look. But I think that's all. We're getting awfully close right now. So thanks to everyone for the help here. Yeah, have a good rest of your week.